All right, first thing first, some of the people say they don't like me smoking or they don't like me wearing all my jewelry. And so I'm going to try to cut back as best I can with the cursing, etc. But I can't hide who I am. That's just me. But let's get on. Anyways, now, through, I do real research, diligent research. This took me months because it confused me a few times while I stumbled a few times because they hide so much. And it take time for the books to come. Sometimes you can't get the book and you got to go to a I drove all the way to Albany, New York just to read a book in the library, take pictures, etc. Anyways, doing the research on Abraham, what I like to do is I like to deal with the Old Testament, usually the Old Testament only. If you can destroy the Old Testament, what's the point of the New Testament? That's just how I feel. Now you can be a Jesus worshiper all you want, but if I can destroy your Old Testament, then your New Testament has nothing to stand on. Anyways, Abraham. Now, Abraham is what the Hebrews called him, the Jews. Ibrahim is what the Quran called him, right? The patriarch, the father of many nations, whatever you want to call him. All right. So first things first is there's no legitimate, no scholar has any scholars had any uh approval, or you can't get more than two or three of them to agree on the birthplace of Abraham. So we'll stick with the scriptures. Uh Most scholars say he was born in Turkey. His father's house was in Turkey. But let's stick to the scriptures. The scriptures tell you he comes from the house of Terah, right? The house of Terah translates to Ur of Chaldea, right? Now, this house that they're talking about is his father's house, right? And the origin of this is 2730 BCE, according to them, because in history, there is no reference, there is no proof of these people. So we're going to stick to what the scriptures, what the biblical narrative is. Anyways, 2730 BCE, you got white people. These are white people. Abraham and his father are white people. So you have white people in 2730 BCE in Ur of Chaldea, which they're placing in Sumeria, which is one of the cities. They're saying it's one of the cities of the Uh, Sumerian. So supposedly God told him to take his trip. He went into Canaan and Egypt, uh, where you get the so-called story of where uh, uh, Ishmael and Isaac. The Jews come from the wife Sarah, I believe her name was. I believe that's her name, and the so-called Arabs or Ishmaelites come from Hagar. Now, that's another key info that you need. Hagar is an Egyptian, right? She's a concubine to Abraham, right? But she's an Egyptian, right? So right off rip, you get confusion with that because if these were the lineage, the Ishmaelites were the lineage of this Egyptian woman, then technically they would be Egyptians, but they're not. They turned out to be Middle Eastern Arabs, whatever. Um, the only source we have for Abraham is, like always, a pseudo Greek source. Most of it is from Josephus, but there's a few other sources, all Greek or European, whatever you want to call it. Again, there's no proof of any ancient nation speaking of these people, speaking of Abraham coming into Egypt or Canaan. There's no proof of it. Now, again, the date 2730 BCE is a critical date because we know in 2730 BCE, not only was there no God of the Bible, but there was no people, right? There's no people. Abraham hasn't started his journey to start this whole Bible narrative bullshit, right? Um, oh, BS, whatever. So what you're going to get to when you get to the origins of Abraham is Ibrahim is he came from the city of Ur of Chaldea, which is not technically is not really, it's a house. It's his father's house, House of Terah, which is a so-called city-state in Sumer, which we have no proof of in 2730 BCE, and these are all white people. And not only that, but there's more proof in his kids in his lineage, because what do white people do? If all throughout the Bible, all throughout history, you usually don't see white people uh, continuing their lineage. I'm talking about ancient times with their own people. They're usually mixing in, right? And so, right off rip with Abraham, what do you have? Right off rip, you're mixing in with the so-called Egyptians because she's a concubine. Hagar, she's a so-called concubine, but an Egyptian concubine. And then you got Sarah, his wife, right? And these are so-called white people from the Middle East from 2730 BCE. Now, if you did the due diligence and you really did your research and you knew history, you would know in 2730 BCE, there is no Ur of Chaldea in Sumer. And this is another problem why I don't like Sumeria, because the origin story of Sumerian, they use their gods. They say the gods ruled for hundreds of thousands of years before the first so-called human king rule. Same thing with Abraham. Abraham, his father was 70 when he had Abraham. And Abraham, if I'm not mistaken, was 55 when he started having kids. And Abraham's father lived till he was 145 years old. 145. Same thing with Noah. So if you have these people living for hundreds of years in 2730 BCE, where we have so much evidence of these ancient nations, we have these ancient nations are writing. Canaan is writing. Kemet is writing. Nubia is writing. Sumer is writing. Akkadian is writing. Everybody's writing. Everybody's putting the proof of what they're going through and what's going on during their time. Not one reference of these people. And not only they're white people in the Middle East in 2730 BCE. It's not hard to see that this is a complete BS. Now, I stick with Kemet. So first thing I did was try to prove this through Kemet, because Kemet, we left a lot of records. I just tried to prove any caravan or if any foreign people, because we will put that any type of trade with these people. There is no reference to these people whatsoever, and they're white people. So if you're gonna, because this is what the Bible do, they imprint themselves into nations. And I'm gonna drop another video on that. That's where you get Moses and Tutmosis, because it stumbled me too. Because when you read the Meganetter, you would what they're trying to do is tie the narrative is Joseph was the second in command, right? And they're backing it with Kemetic writings, but what they're telling you is false, because we had traditional ways of doing things. So even if a king was to die, there was a next in line. You wouldn't go get a foreigner and he would rule in any kind of way. But anyways, that's a whole nother issue. Ibrahim, father of many nations, father of many people, never lived. Now, Book of Abraham, the very first book of Abraham, is written in Egypt. It's during the time, of course, when the Greeks ruled. This book of Abraham, you could just Google it. You could Wikipedia, whatever you do. All you gotta do is put Book of Abraham. Sometimes you gotta put papyrus, or sometimes you could just put Egypt, and then boom, it'll pop up. And what they're going to show you is this so-called Book of Abraham that the Greeks wrote about this man. You know what I'm saying? But they was already way in 3 BCE, 2 BCE planning all this out. And the proof is in the pudding, because in the book of Abraham, why the only well, we always know the origin of all this shit gonna go back, all this stuff goes back to a European white man. Care how you put it, a Greek, a Roman, whatever, it's always a white man. So why is the first reference of so-called Abraham of foreigners, which are Greeks, that's ruling in Kemet? Why would they be writing about Abraham when all these ancient nations was before it, never spoke of any word of this ancient, so-called ancient, they're supposed to be ancient, but never spoke of these people? So it's kind of like common sense. It's confusion, and they run off confusion. There's no way in hell these people live for hundreds of years and there's no proof of it. And then you tell us that you come from a city that's supposed to have a date of 2730 BCE, but there is none. And at 2730 BCE, there is no Ur of Chaldea. So it's just more proof that you use to destroy the false doctrine, right? Again, I'm researching. I'm doing the best I can with the research. My master teacher is in Africa. We do as much talking as we can, but there is that barrier there. So it takes time to learn, because not only do I got to read the books, I got to get the teachings from him, and then I got to do my own research. It takes time. Simple as that. But when it comes to Abraham, it's all false. There's no proof of this man. So you will only have to go off the Bible, and we know that the Bible lies. So you're going to continue to use a book that lies to try to tell people there's truth in it. I don't understand it, whatever. But if a Christian or a Jew or even a Muslim come to you and try to talk to you about their doctrine, you can smash it right off Abraham. You don't even got to go into Moses, because Moses is too easy. You can go a step further and you can smash Abraham. You can smash Abraham. And I'm tired of us playing this dumb role, because these white people are still digging up our ancestors from thousands and thousands of years ago. Still to this day, they still digging us up, finding us all over the place. Still in 2022, we have yet to find one person from the Bible. Not one. Not even an arm, a fingernail. We haven't found anything from these so-called ancient people that conquered so-called many nations and did all this for God. Where is the proof? Where's the proof? Because everything that they claiming is what the Greeks did. If you knew history, if you really knew history, you would know what the Israelites in the Bible, what they're claiming that they did is what the Greeks did in ancient times. So you got to make it make sense. Anyways, again, I got the Facebook groups. I'm up to 3 now. They all under Jabrut Hebrew Slayer. I still got, they shutting everything down, really. That's it right now. Oh, I still got the Twitter, same thing. Everything under my name. I haven't been dropping lately because, I'm researching. It takes time to read all these books and deal with the master teacher and make sure you're dealing with the right information, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that I'm trying to withhold information or knowledge. It's the same thing. The same thing I'm doing, you could do. It's not hard. It may take a few dollars to get the tools that you need to research, but anybody can do it. So it's not like I'm not taking my time. I'm not hiding it from nobody. I'm literally just making sure that I'm learning the right thing, because you can read Medunetter all you want, but Medunetter is just one source. Yes, I love the Medunetter and I use it as much as I can, but at the end of the day, it's just one source. So I like to use more than just one source, because in the Medunetter, they didn't even speak of the Yellow Nile, but they spoke of trade with West Africa. this is more proof that you got to go outside the Mejanetter to learn other things. But anyways, the next thing people wanted me to keep going into was the African roots into Asia, which I don't see the point of that, because even in the Bible, they just spoke of the 7 churches in Asia. They didn't know what the fuck was over there. They definitely didn't know what was in North America. So your so-called God didn't know that the rest of the earth was thriving, because in the Bible, the narrative, or it's always in that area of Kemet. They went into Europe, but that was it. And I read the Bible twice, so besides them so-called claiming that we were slaves and we went on boats all over the world and all this bullshit, BS. The ancestors didn't know anything about the Bible when they was being enslaved. So right off rip, that makes no sense. And then they tell you, well, the Moors ran into Africa, and that's where the Hebrews followed. No, that's a complete lie. In that time, it was a decree to convert. Simple. And most of these Hebrews, majority of them, didn't have a problem converting to Christianity. What the problem was with the Hebrews was they wanted to keep their customs and their rituals. That's where they fell into the issue. But if you really knew history, these so-called fake black Hebrews that went into Africa, that's supposedly us now, they were coons. They were in Europe in bed with the white man way before any of this happened. So why would you want to claim coons? Anyways, I don't want to go into that. I'll drop another video, go off demand, whatever the people want. I'll drop the video. Appreciate you.